So first, I'll show you the one I just pushed out there. This is the one that you were playing with before. I made a small modification to make it a little more accurate. Hello?
You seen the drop off?
Let me, I just thought I loaded that and it didn't seem to come in.
There's something crazy going on here.
And the plot's not quite right.
Oh, it's lost. I think I dragged it into the box and lost it. I hate that.
No, this should be 15. But,
All right, let's try it again. Oh, look at that. I didn't know you could do that. All right, so this is the original version. I don't know who the original version is, but it's broken. No, no. What happened?
mine's working on mine.
Yours is working?
Yep.
Yeah.
I'm completely baffled now.
You can get this to a
Thank you. It seems to have vanished. I don't know where it is. All right. Let's try it. Let's try this again. Okay? Let's try this again. So, as I was saying, recent files, this one. Okay, here it goes. So I think if you look carefully, you will see that they are in fact going to the right place. They were off by one before. So now it is, they really are looking for the one with the most stuff. So you can play with this one. Now, remember how this, I'm running it slowly here intentionally, so you can just kind of see them bounce around. All right, so in order to create the genetic version, what I really wanted to do was do it with a clock chip. That would be the natural thing to do. But unfortunately, the clock chip, there's too much going on here to do it with a clock chip. I'm going to be working to make that possible. But in order to actually have something that works now, what I was able to do was kind of simulate a clock chip, but on one level. So let me show that to you, and then I'll explain to you how it works. So that's the one that's called foraging genetic. It's the second one that I pushed out there. And you'll see it looks exactly the same. So what's going to happen is I've set up a doomsday, which is 500. You can change that just by changing it in that one place. And I'm running it for 10,000. So that means how many doomsdays will there be? 20, right? So each doomsday is kind of like each 500 would be like the run of a clock chip. The only thing is, what's happening here is I'm only doing it with one clock and just segmenting the clock into 500 time unit segments and then restarting it afterwards at the beginning. So to restart it at the beginning, all I really need to do is replenish the undergrowth, replenish the food source, and pull out all the biomass from the agents. Because that's what the clock chip would do for me automatically. That's what I'd get for free. So I had to modify the model to do that. So let me show you, and then of course there's the genetic algorithm. So the first part of it is just modifying the model so you could run it in these little segments and have it start over again. Now you could do that and just use the same exact agents, but you know, it would be just like running the model 20 times from the beginning. It wouldn't be very interesting. So what happens, of course, at doomsday is that there's a major event. So let me show it to you, and then I'll explain it. And I actually found this quite interesting to watch. So there they go. And at doomsday, here it comes. There's the first doomsday. We get our first graph. And then here's the second doomsday. There's the second graph. And you'll notice the graphs do start to change rather dramatically.
So I noticed some of the agents disappearing over time. Is that because in the 100 steps or whatever the doomsday?
They're on top of each other.
They what?
They're on top of each other.
Oh, okay.
They're not disappearing. They're on top of each other.
So they're competing for the same resource?
Yes. That's because they have almost the same W.
Yeah. So they go to almost the same stuff.
When they have exactly the same W, it all turned into one giant blob in the same place.
So you select, after every doomsday, you select?
Yes, I'll tell you how I select, but there is a change at every doomsday. And I'm basically using the approach that Wayne had described.
But here we are not saving each graph.
No, we're not saving each graph. You have to, in order to save the graph, we can add that so that each graph gets saved. I can put that in, but I haven't put that in yet.
Okay, so now it's just changing according to.
Right. So what I'll do is we'll create an output, and you'll have each graph in that output.
You don't have graphs growing within every generation here, right?
Within?
Yeah, within.
No, I'm only displaying graph at the very end. So we've gone through almost the whole thing now. One more.
And is there an interaction between agents here?
No.
Is consumption reduced by multiple agents occupying the same
Yes.
patch?
Yes.
Oh, so there is interaction. So there is interaction. Oh,
Only in the sense that if there are two agents on the patch, they'll consume twice as much.
no, half as much. Two agents on the same patch?
Well, no, they'll consume the same amount, but the patch will go down.
Ah, okay. So there is no interaction.
Yeah. All right. Of course, if the patch hits 0, then there's interaction indirectly. All right. So how did I do this? Well, except for those two little things that I described, this was not particularly hard. So the first thing is, how do we set it up to reset each time? And basically, the way in which you can sort of have these sort of two ways of counting time is that you can ask the clock what time you are and only perform certain tasks at certain times. And that's easy to do because we have a time function that tells us what the time is. So let me first show you how I was able to make the adjustment so that, for example, all of the food in the patches regrew when I wanted it to, at the beginning of a new epoch. So look at the patch, and this is the same patch, almost the same patch as, well, it's the same patch as in the regular foraging. So we can open up another Nova window and we can compare these two. So here's the regular foraging one. So this is the non-genetic algorithm version. So if I go over here and we look at the patch, so what do you see that's different about it when you compare them? There's one obvious difference. Okay, in that on this one I have this second flow called regrowth, and what that does is it causes a regrowth. Now we don't want a continuous regrowth. What we wanted is an instantaneous regrowth right at the epoch. Okay, at the doomsday epoch. So the way I can accomplish that is, first of all, what is my original patch? How am I originally, if we look at the patch value, the original patch value is just math.random times 15. So I'm taking a random number between 0 and 15 as my patch value. So that's what I want to do. I want to do it exactly the same way. So what I do there is in regrowth, open this up, and what I do is do the random star 15, but only at doomsday, or actually everything is happening at doomsday minus 1. So it's happening at 499, 999, 1499, and so on. So this little expression here, this little percent means mod. So I'm asking if time mod doomsday is equal to doomsday minus 1.
What does mod mean?
Mod is the remainder when you divide by the value. So if I divide time by 500 and it's, say it's suppose I divide time by 500 and it's time is 1350 and I divide it by 500, then I'm going to get, and I take it mod 500, I'm going to get 350. So it's the remainder after you take away the 1,000. So this will identify the right places. It will identify 499, 999, 1499, 1999, you know, keep going. All right, so this is great. This is a great way to have a periodic event when you don't have when you can't do it using the 2-level clock. Yes?
You choose 499, 999 because it's zero based? I mean,
Well, because doomsday is 500.
so, I mean, the first step is 0 and the second step is 1, so the 500 step is 499? Or
No, the first step would be 0, so that's 499. I choose it so that 500 becomes a new epoch. You could do it at 500 and 501 becomes a new epoch. It's really, it's a minor adjustment. It's not that
Between
different.
499 and 500, you got to reset everything so that you start a new generation.
So that 500 becomes the same as 0.
so what I'm asking basically is, does this run for 500 steps between each regrowth?
Yes.
Or for 499?
No, it runs from 500 because you're starting at 0.
Yeah, okay.
Right. Yeah, there'll be 500 steps between the times that this actually triggers. Now, one other thing is I say random times 15 minus the patch value because the patch actually might have some value. And I don't want to just add to that. I want to get the same distribution that I had originally. So I have to, this is a situation where you have to subtract off what's there and essentially start fresh. So what I'm doing here is I'm reinitializing it in a way that is identical to the way I initialized it at 0. Okay? Otherwise it's 0, in which case this input sleeps and is awakened every doomsday minus 1. Okay? So that's how that's taken care of. And we do a similar thing for the agent because we have to set him back to 0. This is this is a technique that I've never used before because I've always been able to use clock chips. But this is a way to live with it when you don't have clock chips. The clock chips are clearly much more convenient because they do this all for you for free. And I'm going to be working to make sure that we can do this with clock chips. But I just want to show you that there's enough versatility built into the system that we can do this workaround at this point. So now look what's happening here to biomass. Okay? In the biomass, it's the opposite. We have to get rid of the biomass. We have to zero it out. Right? Because we want to start afresh. Otherwise the comparisons are not going to be in any way meaningful. So here I have a restart flow, and it just this one's even simpler because it makes the same distinction. It says if we are at the doomsday clock, if we hit that doomsday point, then I want to subtract off everything. Otherwise 0. Now, because we're running discretely, this all works. If we weren't discrete, we'd have a much more complicated situation because of the integration rules. We wouldn't be pulling everything out quite as quickly.
But the stock is not discrete.
The stock is not discrete, but the time is discrete. At this point, what it means is that we're adding to the stock. Because the time is discrete, and we're basically using the Euler method of integration, this will work. That's a lot of technical points, but even if the stock isn't discrete, it means that we're adding and subtracting to the value, so we can still make it act discrete.
I think we touched on this a couple days ago, and this is something from this workshop that I'm particularly getting more clear on. The language of discrete versus continuous, does not apply universally and consistently in Nova, right? You guys are saying, well, some things discrete and some things are continuous, and well, you know, shouldn't those things be exclusive from one another? And on our side, whenever I'm using either of these tools, all I'm thinking about is this a sequence? Am I building a sequence generator? In which case it's discrete, and I'm specifying what the next value of the sequence is? Or am I incrementing and de-incrementing a stock? And I think that's something that we need to think about on our side, is how to better present something that's a bit more coherent so that we don't end up in these conflicts where we're mixing and matching discrete versus continuous, when in fact the two methods are not exclusive in a simulation model. You can have sequences and have incrementation and de-incrementation operations in the same model.
Well, I think the simple answer is this. When the clock is discrete, if you have a discrete that is a purple stock, then you're always replacing the value with the next value at each time step. If you have a green stock, then you're always either adding to or subtracting from the value at each time step. If you have this method as discrete, then it's that simple. If you have one of the other methods of integration, then you're kind of in, it's really a question of whether you're using the discrete method of integration or the non-discrete method of the RK methods of integration. That's really the distinguishing characteristic.
So having a method discrete will override this green property of...
No, it'll still add or subtract. It'll just do it it'll just like take the entire value in one gulp. If you start using the RKs, then it treats it as a continuous thing, in which case it smooths it out. Here you're getting a step function.
Richard, in patch, that's what you did. You used the RK method.
No, I've got discrete up here.
No, in patch.
In patch, you got, if you look at patch,
Doesn't matter. Because there's only one clock, the fact that it says RK when you go into patch, that is overridden by the top level clock. It's the top level clock that governs unless it's a clock chip. So that should not, that's false.
And again, you guys are pointing out all these visual inconsistencies, right? Here's a visual environment for you to code in and program in, and you're taking the visual cues off of the visual system that you're in, and it turns out that the visual system isn't accurate to what's actually going on.
Well, there's complications, because sometimes you want to run a submodel, you want to run it on a different kind of clock. So that's why it's not such, there's not an easy solution to what seems like it should be obvious, that the top level clock should just always show up there. Okay, we'll have to, think of we haven't thought of a way to really make that consistent.
Yeah, and thank you all for your very critical assessment.
Well, you're all thinking very, very hard, and I very much appreciate it. This is exactly, I'm not trying to, wave my hands and blow this stuff past you. These are all legitimate points. All I'm saying is that the answers are just not that simple. Okay, there are things we've thought about where, they're some just, and in fact, getting this kind of experience with you is very helpful to feeding into the way we might modify things to make it a little more clear.
I mean, what we need in the end is just clarity on what is happening.
But I think I hope I've made that clear then, right?
But there's something else that's going on that I don't understand, and that is at doomsday -1, you're setting this biomass back to 0.
Yes, this is in the agent.
In the agent, but in the agent chip up there, you also are taking the biomass values at doomsday -1 and ranking them. Or, I mean, before you set it to equal to 0, you've got to decide how much it got to. And
well, obviously, I'm able to get that information out.
So how do we know which of these two things is being performed first? You open that chip there, that yellow chip, you'll see also the same.
Which one, this one?
Yeah. You'll see something that's also going to be performed at the same time, and I don't know which is performed first.
Well, I can tell you which one's performing first.
No, I understand, because it's set to 0 for the next.
Yeah, whatever you do here is for the next interval,
Right, yeah,
okay?
yeah, right.
For this interval, you always have to think one step ahead. That kind of makes things complicated, is that what you set up on these flows doesn't affect now, it affects now +1. So that's why I'm doing it at doomsday -1, because the effect won't be felt until doomsday. Okay?
So that's a good.
All right.
I'm trying to understand what did you change in the behavior of the agents, because I can't find any difference. They're running.
Well, we haven't shown you yet. Okay, all I've shown you so far is the part that describes how I'm able to reset the model at every epoch. That's all I've shown you.
But not in the genetic one, in the original one.
Yes, in the original one. I mean, this is the genetic one, but I haven't shown you the genetic part yet.
In the original one, it wasn't working, and now it is working, so you fixed something.
Oh, you're asking why is the original one working better?
Yeah.
Well, there was a time, unfortunately, I discovered that there was a timing problem between the time that it looked around to see where to go and it made the move. So it was making the move off by 1, and that kind of made it incorrect.
So how, I can't
But the
find
code
any
is not
difference between the...
Open up my chords. I'm using, the way I'm computing my chords is different. That's the only thing. That's the one place.
Could you talk in a little bit more detail about that? 'Cause I know
I really would rather not. Because it's a bug that I don't completely understand, okay? So I just know that it has to do with the timing. And the my cell that was being looked at in my chords was the wrong cell. It was looking at it 1 sooner, and so by using X and Y instead as the coordinates, I'm getting the right cell.
Yeah.
And that has to be something that's fixed, and it's not. I tried to fix it yesterday, and it's a deeper problem in terms of the staging of things, and I don't want to really. It's really would have been very dangerous to experiment with that.
I guess my question wasn't so much what's going on underneath. Sorry to interrupt. In the engine, so not what is on the Nova side, but more for anybody who wants to use this coordinate information to accurately move an agent around. What was the actual NovaScript change that you made that got you the appropriate data, the data that we would expect to get?
If you look at my chords, in here I asked for the coordinates of my cell.
Can you zoom in on that?
I really didn't want to go into this, but okay.
Well, then let's scoot on and.
No, let me. All right, you brought it up. I think I owe you an explanation. If you remember what was in here before, it was my cell dot coordinates. The problem is it was getting the wrong my cell. It was getting one that was 1 day older. And so it was making its decisions based, remember what you do is you grab a cell and then you look around that cell. It was making its decisions based on the wrong cell. This one is just taking the X and Y value that represents where I really am right now as opposed to where I was yesterday. And it's creating a coordinates object out of that to pass in, to make the decision based on that instead.
So my cell, the function my cell, checks where I am in the left.
Well, in this case, apparently it was checking it was not updated. At the time that the information was being drawn here, it had not yet been updated. And so that's what I mean by a staging problem, okay? And the problem is that everything is staged in such a delicate fashion that every time I change one thing, something else breaks. And so having found a solution here, you wouldn't believe how when you're trying to add features, it just complicates matters. I'm not whining. I'm just trying to tell you that every time Wine says, well, can you do this? Why can't it just do this? And I go, hey. We're exploring new territory here. These are not models that I've worked with before. I mean, you've probably never been to a workshop that has been this loose in a sense, but we're really inventing this stuff as we go along, and it's exciting, but it also can be a bit daunting. But at least I hope you realize that in the end we did come up with solutions, and in fact we provoked very interesting conversations as a result of that, as opposed to what might happen if it were all just coming out of a box for you. But to finish the explanation here, I'm taking the current X and Y. Those are the values from the stocks, and those really do represent where you are. Okay, that is where you are right now. And so by using those coordinates, I was able to get the right neighborhood, and that turned out to be the only thing I had to change. So does that answer the question?
somebody asked, does this mean that we should replace my chords in all future versions of models that require this information with what we're using?
Not necessarily, but because, for example, in the grazing version, this didn't happen.
Interesting.
Okay, so there's something different about the way things were being staged in the grazing version. This didn't happen in that.
One thing that's coming.
I mean, I'm talking about the hex version.
Right, the hex version.
Yeah.
One thing that's coming to mind for me is that yesterday we were talking about how you communicate from an agent to a cell, right? And somebody asked the question, well, why can't I just output information on a pin from my cell and then input that information in my agent? You know, shouldn't I just visually be able to do that and then specify that same relationship? And my answer was, well, no, for right now, the agent-cell interactions that we have are all built on these functions. They're built on these operators, like my cell and my chords and all that stuff. But what's hard is that you can't see when you're calling that function what's actually going on underneath. Whereas if you actually are able to visually connect the information, you would be able to see that. And you know, maybe this would be something that
Well, more importantly is you have to be able to create the interaction in a standardized way so that it happens at the right time.
Yes.
Timing is incredibly crucial in this, because what you're doing at each generation is you're essentially taking the current state, doing some kind of computation on that to produce the next state. Okay? Some things are supposed to happen in the current state, like for example the computations. Some things really should happen in the next state, like the visualization. So there's a before and an after, and you have to divide the events, all the different things that have to happen during each iteration of the clock into the before and the after, and you have to do it exactly right. Because unfortunately, for example, some things like the display rely on information that might be old at this point. You know, you have to make sure that everything is being pulled from the right place at the right time. And at the same time, you have to balance that against a certain need for efficiency. So, yes?
So, question related to what you said. So, if we have many computations happening in the same step, how can we know what's actually happening before or after? Because it's not linear, it's not...
That's right, it's not linear, and it shouldn't be, okay? In fact, you should imagine that all of these things are happening in parallel. And if you don't design your model so that they can happen in parallel, then it's not a good model. Because in fact, these things do happen in parallel. So all these computations...
Count one on each other, no? Like
well, in reality, of course they're linearized, so that you're going to do maybe this stock before this stock.
Right.
Okay? But you might do this stock before this stock. You don't know. And so your model has to be able to cope so that the computation doesn't depend upon the ordering in which those things are actually done. If you don't do that, then you're not designing the model correctly. Okay?
But for instance, for the flow dy, it should know, I guess it does know that it sees that there's a code chip connected to the flow, so it knows that it has to calculate the code chip before calculating.
Yes, so that's the way it works. I mean, I'll give you some idea of how this actually works. All you really have to do is you have to address each of these stocks. I call them the stateful objects, because it's their state that's being updated. So let's say we're dealing with x. So x relies on dx, right? So x will say, okay, dx, what's my next value? dx then says, okay, what's his next value? I rely on the code chip. So it propagates back. So it's what we call a pull propagation. So the code chips are not eager. They don't just go say, hey, here's my value. They don't get evaluated unless they're pulled upon. Okay? Now that creates another problem, because suppose nobody ever pulls on them, then they never get evaluated. Now that's okay unless the code chips have state. Some code chips have state, and you have to make sure that every time they're used, you actually do evaluate them. So if at the end of everything a code chip has not been evaluated, it will be evaluated just to update its state. Okay, these are, as I said, little subtle things. But the fact that dx, see now what will happen is dx pulls on the code chip to get its answer. Well then dy comes along and it pulls on the same code chip. All right? The code chip's not going to evaluate it a second time. Once the code chip is evaluated and produced an answer, that answer gets what we call cached. It gets put into a little memory. And so the second time it goes in there, it just pulls out the answer that was there. So each code chip will only be evaluated at most once. Does that satisfy? All right, so now we're ready to see how the genetic algorithm actually was implemented. And for that, I didn't use a code chip, I used the command, because it really involves, it could have been done in a code chip, but it was actually more appropriate to do it in a command, because a code chip is something that produces answers, it produces data. It has pins, output pins. And what we're doing here has nothing to do with producing output, it has to do with regenerating and reconfiguring the program. So to start, let me mention this is something that hasn't come up, and that is before in any of the examples, and that is that agents have the ability to die and to create. And it's a simple process. There are two special functions called kill and create. And actually an agent can kill another agent. So if I'm agent 3 and I don't particularly care for agent 7, I can kill him. I can kill him by passing in the 7 as the argument to kill. Okay, so if everybody is on guard here, they can be massacred. So far in everything I've done, I've only had agents kill themselves. The other thing that they can do is they can regenerate. That is, they can create a duplicate of themselves. Now the duplicate will be essentially a clone of the existing agent, but you can vary parameters. So you can clone something, but you can make changes as well. So one of the examples, if you look at the billiards example or the ants example or any of the examples where I have that going on, I don't, when the object is moving, if I clone the object, it will get the same trajectory as its parent. And I don't really want them to be moving together. So what I do is, in those examples is I add what I call a wiggle, which is a small, I use a normal, a little random normal variable to just wiggle it. So it's going this way, so I wiggle its trajectory just a little bit so that if you're watching if you watch the demonstration, you'll see that they go, and then suddenly they just go off like that. One of them will go off in the other direction. So that is what this particular command is all about. It's about deciding for each agent is going to, at doomsday, make a decision. Do I die because I'm not performing very well? Or do I recreate myself with a little bit of change because I am performing well? Okay? So, in order to do that, yes?
Can you explain again the difference between a command and a code chip?
A command and a code chip are almost the same. The difference is that a code chip actually outputs values. And a command does not output any values. It just makes changes to things. So if you wrote a code chip that had no outputs, you could be doing that in a command. Now the problem, so that's basically it, okay? So let's open this thing up. And you can see this is the whole, let me just sort of run you through what's going on here. Okay. And I'll make it bigger so you can see it. That will help too. All right. So first of all, it turns red. Second of all, once again, I'm only doing it. Here's the same doomsday check. So this code, this command only gets executed on doomsday -1. So that's the big day of judgment. So the first thing I do is I create an array, which is a list, and I am going to now grab the entire list of agents. Okay? Grab the entire list of agents, and then I'm going to run a loop that takes their biomass and adds them to this array. So this array called masses consists of the list of all the biomasses. Okay? The next thing I want to do is I want to sort that list. And this is a little bit technical here, This underscore, just to explain, JavaScript, there are a number of packages that have been written for JavaScript that really add some additional functionality to it. Somebody asked me the other day about why couldn't I have just done a maximum directly instead of, why did I have to write, who was that who asked that about, I have to add, I could have used an underscore function to do that. You can go online and you can look up the underscore functions. They're very, very useful utilities. And I've loaded the underscore package into Nova, so every underscore function is available as a, as a help function. If you've ever programmed, if you program in MATLAB, they have a lot of very special functions that do nice special things. And this underscore package provides that. So they're documented quite thoroughly online. And all I really want to do is I just want to sort. So I've got this list of masses, right? And they're not sorted. And then I sort them. Now, why do I want to sort them? Because I want to find the median. So once I've sorted it, the median will be the one that's at the 50% point, right? The one that's halfway across, unless I did this wrong. And so median is the sorted masses at the index indicated by the length divided by 2. So that's the one. So here's my whole list. I've got the list sorted, and the median one will be the one that's right in the middle. So now I decide, my biomass, am I, so I put little print statements in here originally just to check it out. And that's a very useful thing while you're developing, is you can put print statements in that will tell you stuff that's happening.
Where do they appear?
They appear in the console. So they'll appear in the console, and then you'll see them. So that's another, good, I try to build very slowly and make sure everything is what it's supposed to be. So the first thing I did is I printed out these sorted masses to make sure that they really were correct. Anyway, so the rest of it's easy. If I am one of the bad guys, I'm going to kill myself, okay? It doesn't sound as terrible as it is. All that happens is that particular agent is retired, okay? It leaves the group. Actually, it gets recycled. Everything, they all get recycled so that it can be reused later.
So it's a green program.
It's a very green program.
Environmental.
No, mainly it gets recycled because it makes things very much faster. Why should I rebuild the whole thing from scratch when I basically have the structure? All I have to do is reinitialize it.
But it's a different ID.
It has a different ID and it has different parameters. But
which is also clean because more energy, more.
Everybody wins. Okay. All right. So now that's easy to see. Now, otherwise, I'm one of those who are considered good. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to clone myself. And the way you clone yourself is you call create. Now you can give create arguments that change the parameters of the child so that they're not identical to you. You can pass in any, now the way this is structured, this is what's known as an object in JavaScript. It's a list of names and values, and the thing I'm trying to change is the weight, and I'm changing it to weight plus normal 0.001. So what am I doing? I'm wiggling the weight a little bit. Now, of course, this parameter here, 0.001, is something you could be changing. In fact, the right thing to do is to list it as a property up here, and then vary it to see how it changes things when you're doing experimentation. But I'll leave that to you to do.
That's a mutation rate?
That's a mutation rate, okay? So that's the whole thing, as you can see. Now, one thing, there's an inefficiency here that will be corrected rather, when we do the clocked version. And that is, it really isn't necessary for every agent to compute this list, because they'll all be the same for every agent. So when I do the clock chip version, it'll be the program at the higher level that will actually be doing the decision making. But that couldn't really work at the way we set this up here, because there is no higher level. I mean, there isn't a way to really make that work. So
can I make one comment here? You might want to rather change that to a random variable uniform on an interval, because you don't want to get very large or very small, because Your weights are actually constrained within a
Well, I'm going to let people play with that. I mean, I just threw something in there that made some amount of sense. But you know, I don't want to solve this problem for any, you know. Otherwise, there's nothing for you guys to do. But I'm just showing you where you can make changes. And this is you probably shouldn't. You know, I mean, there's nothing else in here that you'd want to change. Excuse me.
Normal distribution, and what is this command normal?
Well, normal will produce a sample from a normal distribution whose mean is 0 and whose standard deviation is 0.001.
And WT is the vector.
WT is the weight of my weight.
But it's one value.
It's one value, right? We're only using one value for the weights. So this in the child, the weight will have been perturbed by a small amount. Question?
Yeah, is there documentation about the different functions or whatever you call them that are available and what they do, like kill, create?
Yes. Just in the same place there's documentation for, if you, there's two ways to, on the Minerva website, and also if you right click, here, let me show you, I can do this right here. If you go to here, you'll find kill in here, right click on it, and it should pop up. I mean, it's not particularly, where is it? There it is. So here it is, right? Kill, location, move, they're all in there.
What is the slash asterisk? Is that a comment?
Oh, yeah, the comment characters for JavaScript, let me go back to that then. Is if you do a slash asterisk slash, what's inside there will be a comment. Now there is another kind of comment which is just a double slash. If you use that, that may not work because this code is actually, remember, we create NovaScript code out of it, and the lines may not line up the right way. So the safest way to create a comment is this way. In fact, it's the only way to create a comment. You shouldn't use the other way.
The difference is NovaScript from actual JavaScript.
NovaScript is JavaScript with additional objects, special objects, and functions added to it. So it's kind of a doped up JavaScript. So all of JavaScript is there, right? Any JavaScript program will run in NovaScript. But then there are things you can write that are additional things that are. So what we say, the computer science way of describing this, we say that NovaScript is embedded in JavaScript. Okay, so the whole JavaScript is there. So it's like it has extended JavaScript with additional capabilities. Okay, any questions about this? Yes.
I have two questions.
Yes.
One, it seems like for each agent in the simulation, the whole list of agents is sorted.
Yes, that's what I was saying. It's not efficient, and when I get the clock chip version of this, we'll try to eliminate that, so that it only gets sorted once. Okay. So that's right. Every agent is doing a task that is identical to what every other agent is doing, but it didn't seem at this level to create. As you could see, it was running pretty fast. So.
Depends on how many agents you want.
Right now, if you have 1,000 agents, I'm sure it'll slow up.
Is there is it going like on parallel? When you kill one and then you're checking the other agent, then you have the new result of the one.
That's my second question.
No. The kill doesn't take place until basically they're marked for death. Okay? When you kill something, it doesn't die immediately. So it's still considered in the other computation. The kill takes place afterwards. So all you're doing is saying kill this thing, but don't kill it now. Kill it at the transition. Okay? Now, if you kill an agent, now suppose you've killed an agent, and let's see what would happen if you killed an agent. No, it would still work. When you kill an agent, it becomes a zombie, and a zombie agent doesn't do certain things. But basically, it's available for use in a computation.
To eat other agents instead of rest.
Yeah, that's right. But doesn't have much time to do it. So is that satisfactory? And also, by the way, when you birth an agent, the new agent doesn't pop into existence until the next generation. So basically what you do is you're setting it up. You're saying, you know, these agents go away, new agents are here, now they show up.
Will the new agent be created in the same coordinates?
It'll be, unless you change it. You can say, give it an init X and an init Y, just like the init X and init Y on here. So that's why we use init X and init Y. So if you give them a different init X and init Y, it will occur at wherever you specify. If you don't give it init X and init Y, it'll be right on top of you. Okay, but remember, after this, we use random to create them, so, yeah. Question?
Yeah, I still don't understand the create, because if I right click on it, then it says you have to put inside the init. But what you put inside is that
You don't have to put init, that's, we have to correct that. You don't have to put it. Oh, init, that's what we call, we're not using, that's an initializer. Okay, this is the initial, what I have there is the initializer. Okay, this is what's called an initializer. It's a list of initial values. You can leave it out. If you leave it out, you will get an exact clone of the parent.
So you say WT, this is the variable you want to change.
Yeah.
Then you tell him what to do.
That's right. So you give it a list of variables that you want to change. If you don't give it any, if you give it nothing, then nothing changes. If you give it that list, then it will change those variables in the child.
Suggest something for when you right click on it and maybe
Yeah.
put an example and that can
Yeah.
help just understand
Sure.
how to use it.
Okay. Good point. Okay, any other questions? Yes?
If someone wanted to implement a genetic algorithm over many parameters at once, such as over a neural network that decides where to go,
Yeah.
then you can't enter like 50 new variables in that
Sure you can.
space. Or
In here?
call a function, yeah. Can you
Yeah, no, you can have comma and have another one and another one and another one.
50 or 100, I want to do that in a function.
You can do it in a function. So if you put a function in here, it'll, you know, it doesn't have to just be a constant in there. It could be a function that does it. You could call a function in there that produces an answer that would do it. So yes, you can do what you're saying. Okay? The only thing that's bad about this right now is the multiplicity of you know, where every agent is going through this same sort. That's just unavoidable at this point, but we'll, you know, make it better. And maybe I could have even made it better now, but I wanted to make sure I had something that worked. Okay, everybody follow this now? So what is it that you can play with? I mean, you can play with, you can again play with the original weights, you can play with how this is changing here. What else could they be manipulating?
Doomsday.
The value of doomsday, how, you know, there's quite a few things.
So the main thing that I'd like you to play with is setting up the ecological functions between consumption and resource and their dynamical changes, and also including in that competition. So here individuals are only looking to move, they're only getting information on resources. But if they also see some other individuals out there, they must avoid them, so you can have some way of doing that.
Well, that introduces a whole new thing of looking for other individuals.
Yeah.
Okay, if you want to find an example of that, there's a good example that shows how that's done in the flocking and the ants, where I give a radius and it gives me the list of everybody in that radius. So you could do it more easily because you can ask for everybody who's in your.
On that.
It can.
You got to know it by direction.
It would be the radius. Everybody in a certain
Right,
radius.
but that's that's just in a radius, not directional information.
No, it's not directional information. The other thing you could do is you could ask. You could look in the 8 directions and say, is there anybody there?
That's what I do.
Right. So you can add that, you know, because you can always ask a cell you know, how many agents are in you.
So the best thing to do, which is a little more sophisticated, is to look at a cell and ask how many individuals are in and neighboring that cell. So you get one layer further out, because they may move in at the same time that you move in. So you want to avoid moving into a cell that others can move into, not just that others are there. So you can set up that as well. But if you set it up and demonstrate it, we'll be very happy. So if you develop the code for that,
Yeah.
we'll leave it to you.
I mean, you're going to do some of these more sophisticated things will involve a little bit
So those
of coding muscle.
Those of you who want to exercise a bit of coding muscle on this should try that one.
This is a good segue. I don't know if Rich has done or done yet. We have a Google group, and you guys would be our first big set of users who could use that as a way to ask questions as you're running into bugs, or as you're running into things that you are trying to implement and you're not quite sure which primitives to use or whether they're giving you what you expect them to give you. That would be a place where anytime you post to that, our Nova team would get looped in on it, and anybody who's able to answer your question can answer.
You should show them how to do that.
Yeah, so I emailed 2 links to Wayne. One is the link to the Google group, and I'd like everybody to take a second and just sign up. And if you have a question right now, just post that question there.
Well, can you want to show them how to do it?
I will.
Yeah.
The other link that I sent to Wayne, which he'll pass on to you guys as well, is we're in the process of starting to accumulate users to build a Stack Exchange. So if you guys know what Stack Exchange is. So
Can you send these links to Ron, because I think he's got
can
everybody.
Ron send them out? Yeah. I'll send them
Yeah.
to you, Ron.
We would like you to all correspond with this one link because it'll help us. There is a utility which essentially sets up what do you call those things? You know.
So if you guys go, are you talking about Stack Exchange or Google?
Stack Exchange.
So if you guys take a second and go to stackexchange.com, you see that Stack Exchange is a big ecosystem for Q&A. So people can ask questions in all sorts of different domains. There are subdomains. So there's a statistics Stack Exchange if you're ever having some problem.
Yeah, so like you can post a question, somebody else will answer it, and somebody else will, and they start flaming each other after a while, but that's just natural.
And you can upvote and downvote answers and
It's a forum, that's the word I'm trying to think of. Stack Exchange is a big set of forums.
And it's like forums, but better, because for common asked questions that a lot of people look at and often need answers to, you as the user get to choose which answer was the best one for you, and those migrate to the top. So oftentimes there's about 7 answers, and 6 of them aren't very good, and one of them is fabulous.
Anyway, to get Nova on a forum, you have to go through a series of ordeals, trial by fire. You have to get enough people who say that they're interested in it, and you have to. There's what we have what's called a probationary forum right now. If you go to the Nova website, you'll see something about it.
Well, if you go to the link that we're about to send you.
Yeah, it would really help us if we could get more of you to say yes, we'd love to have this forum, and then it'll be established, and that way we'll have all the new Nova users in the world, which we hope will grow, over time, being able to interact with each other. Because right now, we do the best we can in providing answers to questions, and I think we're doing a pretty good job.
Well, and ideally, we'd like to be able to answer one of your questions here. If Ron has a question and we answer it, we'd really love it if everybody else was able to go know what the answer to that question was. And this is a way for us to save our time and be efficient with our time, but also be efficient with your time. I mean, we'll do our best to respond to every question that you guys ask, and you please ask every question you have. I mean, it would be great if we had 20 questions from each of you that we'd answer, because then we have a body of knowledge that is developing, and that's good. But at the same time, we work on a lot of other projects, so having persistent answers that you guys say, oh yeah, this is the right answer and it worked for me, helps all of you guys and it helps us.
Yeah, I can't tell you how many times I run into a problem. I'll Google the question and a Stack Exchange thing will pop up, and about 90% of the time I'll find my answer in there.
Right.
So it really is a very powerful tool.
So Ron, I emailed those two things to you.
Okay.
And this is important enough to us that it's probably worth it to just take 15 minutes and get you guys to all
Do you want to bring your computer over and show them?
go through it. Well, I think actually I can look at everybody's machines right here.
Well, why don't you
Demo it.
show it? No? I'm gently prodding him here.
Yeah. So I guess this is most of your guys' first experience with Stack Exchange or first experience with the Google group. So the way Google group works is you're going to sign up, and then you can specify
Here,
the frequency
you should
with
take the
which
mic.
specify the frequency with which you get update emails on what's going on in the forum. So if you want daily updates on what people at the Nova forum are asking and what answers they're getting, you can set that. If you want weekly updates, if you want truncated updates, you can get all that stuff. So that's the Google side, and this is the one that we immediately have access to right now. The Stack Exchange actually requires that you have enough interest in what you're doing. You have enough people asking questions, enough people saying, yeah, I want a Stack Exchange for this. So we don't have a Stack Exchange up right now. So the Stack Exchange task is going to be very easy. You're just going to click on a link and you're going to say, yeah, I like this. Can we have more of this? Can we start this up? And
They
then
have what's called a probationary site on there.
And then you're gonna, that's essentially the task there. You might have to also pose a couple sample questions, things that you might want to see answered. But that essentially for us helps accumulate interest. So every workshop we do and every group of students we work with, we're gonna slowly build up a pack of Nova people foaming at the mouth for support and QA resources that we can have working on that Stack Exchange. And I'll demo this in a second. Questions? Were you guys able to get that link from Ron yet?
You should be now.
Good. Thank you, Ron.
Did people later want Richard to show the hex array,
Yeah, I'll talk about the hex array too.
or did you just want to play with it?
So let's do that early this afternoon.
Okay.
Give them a chance now, and I'll show them the hex array this afternoon.
Questions? Let's see.
It's probably not a good thing from a proof of algorithmic proof.
So here are the links that Ron sent out. One of them is the Google Groups. This is the one that you'll probably spend a little bit more time on. Let me just,
There were two, you sent me one.
I think they might have been attached later on in the email, but here are the links if you want to go grab them. I'll zoom in a little bit more on them. Sorry about that, Ron.
I got one from you.
It might be down in the forwarded content.
Well, the problem is that you can't code anything behind what.
I got the Google Groups link.
Okay. Well, that might be a blessing in disguise. So let's focus on the Google Groups first. Go ahead and sign up for the Google Groups. You'll see that one person already asked a question, right? We had somebody download Nova in France, and he had a question. He had a problem with internationalization. There were commas and periods and stuff like that, and we were able to resolve it. So every time you guys post something to this forum, we're able to pull it on our side and actually respond to you guys via email, and there'll be little threads and strings like that.
I got to the group, but that's it, or do I need to do anything? I don't see the thing with the French guy that.
Let's see. Oh, there it is. Access to Google Groups for business has been restricted by your domain admin. So I think the way we have this set up is through Google Services. So I don't know who your domain admin is, or
What? The administrator of the computer?
which is you, right?
Yeah.
Then it might be the administrator actually of your Google account. So you all just ran into an interesting issue. You guys might run into this too. But when he tried to go to the page, it said that access to Google Pages for businesses, which is I think the service that we're using for this, I didn't know this, is restricted by your admin, your administrator.
What page?
Yeah, well, I don't have a problem.
Yeah, so nobody else ran into this problem, so it's just you all, nobody else has that?
Maybe I'll try to log in with the Google account that is not.
Yeah, if you have an alternate Google account.
Yeah, I just did my personal one.
Yeah, so your personal one will probably work better. I don't know if the university email accounts that you guys have are Google education accounts, but those seem to have some restrictions. So use your personal if you can.
I use my university Google account.
Okay, so then Hebrew University seems to be fine. Maybe other universities are a little bit different. Take a second. Well, and actually, here's, I'm going to assign you guys a little homework for today. As you guys have questions that come up, and I sit and you talk about those questions, I'm going to want you to post that question on the Google forum. And as I answer it with you, I'll also answer it there. And then that way you can get accustomed to what that looks like and how we can respond and we can get this workflow going. But let's start documenting our answers. So that's number one. Was everybody able to get to that page and get set up with that? Everybody has access. We'll be touching on that throughout the day while you guys are working. So the other link is just a Nova modeler link. And if I click on this link, it sends me to our Nova Modeler webpage. And all our Nova Modeler webpage has on it at this link is this little thing that says proposed Q&A site. And this is essentially how Stack Exchange starts building these things. They say, okay, you want to have your own little QA environment that we're going to host with our servers, then get 200 people who want to use it. Okay. You guys can get to this link by going to novamodeler.com. and going to support and QA. So Nova Modeler, support, QA. One step at a time. We'll have 34.
How many we need? 200?
I don't know. One step at a time.
No, how many do we need?
I don't know. It's kind of complicated, the algorithm that they use.
Okay.
It's not just the number, it's also how active they are and stuff like that. And everybody has a limited number of things that they can follow. It's complicated. So if you go here, the thing that you can do for us and for you is click support this proposal, and it should take you through to our current little developing space. And yeah, so you do need to, I think you need to be a follower. And then if you notice, it says up in the top right corner, this proposal is in definition stage, so the topic and audience are still being decided. It needs 46 more followers, 40 more questions, and the questions have to have a score of 10 or more. So you guys can follow, you guys can ask a question, and then you can upvote other people's questions. And I don't think just in the group that we have today we'll get to enough to open up our Stack Exchange, but as we continue doing these workshops, this will continue to develop and grow. And I'm sure as followers, you guys will get updates on whether this is maturing into its next form and what that looks like. But this is one step along the way. So if you can take a second to ask a couple questions there and upvote other people's questions.
I got into this, but I don't understand how you got to this.
This one is different. So you're able to get into this one, and were you able to get subscribed and everything?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
But so this is something else?
Separate, yeah. So if you go to novamodeler.com,
Okay. So it's here.
and then go up to the top, and go to support. So you guys have been very good at asking very, very good questions all throughout the week. Take one of those questions, put it in one sentence or 2 sentences, and just post it. And then if you see another question that you like, I know, I think this is a great question. How does one use the histogram plugin? We kind of spent like an hour working with the histogram plugin in all its different forms, shapes, and sizes, so that's a good question, I think.
So if we have a question, we'd rather we post it there than in the Google areas.
Okay, so this is a very great question that I want everybody to hear.
Let's post it.
So, so if you have a question, where should you put it? Should you take it to this forum, or should you take it to Google Groups? If you want your question answered, take it to Google Groups. Because right now we don't actually have a way to answer any of these questions. So in this definition stage, all they're trying to do is field questions and get a sense for the community and what it is that the community actually wants. So this is just like a proof of interest right now. So you guys have to act really interested. You have to put a bunch of questions on there and give it thumbs up, and even though it's kind of artificial, because what benefit do you get from that right now? We don't actually answer your question, but later on we will. And then the Google group is the great place to go for right now. Ask your question, get your answers, and that's how we'll do it. So content here that won't get you answers, Google will get you answers for now. And then maybe 6 months, 9 months from now, instead of using the Google tool, we'll use our local Stack Exchange. We'll see. There are ups and downs to these 2 different tools. It's nice. So there's good things about the Google tool that Stack Exchange doesn't have. So we'll see as we go on in the future. And if this is your first introduction to Stack Exchange and programming and coding is something you're into, Stack Exchange is like manna from heaven sometimes. When something isn't working and everything's messed up, and you go on Stack Exchange and there's your answer. So it is. Let's go ahead and take maybe just like 20 minutes, and you guys can do us the favor of banging on these 2 tools, and I'll cruise around and. But please do us the favor of taking time to help us out with these.
Do it again. Just notice. Older version. Anybody who knows how to use it. This thing here, this neural network has everything you need.
How come we take my understanding that it keeps saying 40 more followers and everyone is always supposed to go down?
So one question was, how come if we're all following, it says we still need 40 more followers? Shouldn't that be going down? I'm pretty sure these only update on a daily or a weekly basis. Right now we're pretty small. Stack Exchange doesn't care about us, so they aren't going to spend a lot of time using their servers to update our update our data right now. So maybe tomorrow we'll only need 20 more followers, right? Yeah. So let's open up the little arrow. And I think what we want to do is we actually want to say new topic. A new version of this application is required. Please refresh the page. Does it just loop you through that? I see.
But it's the weights that determine the activation.
לפה אנחנו צריכים להכניס איזושהי שאלה. ואז תראו שהפורום שלהם מבוקש, ואז יעלו אותו לפורום. זה לא מקבל תשובות.
משמעות רוצים שילך סיסמה אימייל אחד. גם תעודת זהות מתחלק כמו כרטיס גול.
That's forward propagation. That's forward propagation. Over-obligation is moving network, right? We don't want to generate the alpha, so that is what it's a forward propagation. Back propagation is propagation alpha regulation. It's going to generate the deltas of all alpha. They're calling forward propagation.
No, this is also, no, this is not the updated scheme. This is
אני חושב שזה... את צריכה לשאול שאלה בעולם האמיתי. They make a difficult time in asking questions in the stack exchange.
Does it?
They say that we need 5 points, and because we are new users, we have only
Okay,
1
well, we're
point,
talking about the same thing.
so we cannot ask a question. So maybe we should ask questions in the real world. We need to earn points. Like they don't want.
They don't want us to do what we're doing, actually.
Come in and ask questions.
Okay, so how does one? It's like a pyramid scheme.
So I cannot.
if someone
Okay.
general idea of what
I can go to the forward.
Yeah.
the concept of how you can use a neural network, and it's important to stress that there's an important phase there, training.
So this is the message I got.
Okay.
I need to have at least 5
I thought that was.
Okay, and then what are the ways that
So we need to ask questions not in the area 51.
in another one to get reputation?
Outside, in the real world.
But I don't.
So in some other stack exchange.
Making sure we're talking about the same thing.
And is there any other way? I remember doing this once, and
So this is the way, like,
Let's see.
question voted. You should ask a question.
have you verified your email address when you signed up? Did it send you an email? And you clicked on that? There you go. So when you confirm your email address, you get reputation. Yeah. Yeah, these are just example questions, or these are questions that you would like an answer to, even though you aren't going to get an answer to them right now. Sorry?
ranking in order to pose questions here, right?
I don't think so.
So these don't update immediately.
So how can I actually ask a question?
So the question is, yeah, how can I ask a questions to your Stack Exchange?
You need to log in to Stack Exchange?
You do need to be logged in to ask a question. So here's the idea. Stack Exchange doesn't want to have people artificially make a bunch of email accounts and then set up a bunch of fake users. So they put all these things kind of in the way that verify that you're actually who you say you are, and that you're actually a person who asks questions and upvotes other people's questions, and you're not just You're not just like a bot, or you're not just something else. So the first thing that somebody pointed out is that you need to have reputation to post a question. As soon as you verify your email address, they give you 50 reputation. Lucky you. You can keep that in your pocket. And then you can use that reputation to ask questions and upvote other people's questions. And it's all, again, like I said, there are things that are very nice about Stack Exchange, if we can get there. But there are things that are cumbersome and tricky like this. So again, you guys are doing us the favor of going through these steps and upvoting and downvoting things. I want to point out something interesting. So the criteria for moving on to the probationary period, so right now it's in the definition period. The probationary period is what would come next, and then I think we'd actually be able to start answering questions at that point. So getting 40 followers is not going to be very hard. But then the next question is that you have to have 40 questions with a score of 10 or more, which means that you guys are going to ask a bunch of questions. Right now we have like 8 questions, so we eventually have to get to 40. Not only do we have to get to 40, but then 10 people for each question have to say that it was a good question. So again, this is Stack Exchange building a structure. That means that you have to have a lot of people all interested, looking at it, interacting with it. Other questions?
You want us to go over the questions already there and give them a high rank?
Yes, yeah. So if there's a question in there that you think is a useful question, like how to use a histogram, you can upvote that one as well. It's all kind of comical, right? It's kind of like a pyramid scheme. It's like you have to recruit other people, and they have to do stuff, and they have to do stuff, and there's weird little credits.
What are you dragging us into here?
This is a good question. So what are you dragging us into here? So this is something that we think would be a useful forum.
Yeah, no.
And Stack Exchange in all of its other capacities is also a very useful forum. So
For your own good.
to some degree I am right now, the way they have this set up, because I want to use their services, I am acting as their like advocate, trying to like get you guys to do things for them. So if for any of you this doesn't seem like something you want to do, you always have the choice to not do it. Please feel free to exercise your own free will. But this is something that helps us get further along in terms of quantifying the number of users we have and getting good support resources out to those users as well. I also want to point out that that we certainly won't be able to overcome. The people in the room right now will not be able to take this Stack Exchange to the next level. But you are a step in the right direction. So, like I said, I only wanted to take about 20 minutes for you guys to interact with this, and as time permits later on.
How do you vote?
The question is, how do you vote? You click on the little up arrow. So where it says 8. If you click there. But I wouldn't agonize over this. If you're running into headaches and things that are stuck with Stack Exchange and things that you don't want to do or things that seem like they're more effort than they're worth, that's okay. Your time is valuable.
Why does it tell me please register to use voting because I'm registered? I'm a follower. And I'm logged in.
Yeah,
What is register?
let's try clicking on our register link. It looks to me like you should be.
I had the same problem.
Should be
I
fine.
did follow, and then I got some ID. It was random ID, and I got 50 reputations. But then when I tried to sign up, it said that I need to create a new account.
You need to.
Oh
And I
yeah?
lost the follow account. I can't log into that.
Okay.
And I lost all the reputations. I have one.
All right, so it looks like Stack Exchange's flow is a little messed up because I saw people who were logged in, who were registered, who had reputation, and they were trying to upvote things, and Stack Exchange said, you have to register.
They want your Google
Well, don't give them anything you don't want to give them. But actually, I think even people, yeah, so people who went through that step as well, it actually didn't solve the problem. So I think Stack Exchange's algorithm is a little messed up here.
You should probably first register and then follow, and not the other way around.
It could be that, or it could be that it takes a little while for the registration server to update before the back end on the forum server updates. So let's go ahead, and I think you guys have all put forth a very valuable effort in following, and that's good. This is something, like I said, that we're trying out. It's not something that is going to be done today. It's just a small thing. So you guys can let this go and close this down, and maybe later on, as we get more users and more people involved, we can come back around to it, and it'll be a blossoming community of questions and answers.
I earned the badge.
Yeah, I finished my reputation. I can't hold it.
I'm not a big fan of this stuff to begin with, but this is a useful tool, and I don't know.
Another thing to procrastinate with. This is great.
It's another thing to procrastinate with. This is great. Good. Yeah, so if you're done banging on that, let's take a second and go to the Google group and get comfortable and familiar with that as well. Thanks so much for taking the time to do that. That does help us out. If you're already connected up to the Google group, then I think you could work on whatever step you want to work on with either your projects or with the models that we're looking at. And then as questions come up, as I'm talking with you guys one-on-one, or Rich or Wayne is talking with you one-on-one, we'll just try to take that question, bundle it up, put it on the page, and then not only will I answer it with you, but I'll also answer it there. So that will be a little less tedious and circuitous than the Stack Exchange thing. It is very hot in here.
Yeah, we should ask them.
Question?
Yeah, I think that takes a few minutes break.
Yeah, if you guys want to take a break, this should be a good time to take a break.